The Prosperous Few and the Restless Many, by Noam Chomsky, is a concise yet incisive critique of the global economic order, focusing on the increasing disparity between the wealthy elite and the majority of the world's population. The book, based on a series of interviews conducted by David Barsamian, offers a clear-eyed analysis of the socio-economic and political forces shaping the contemporary world, highlighting how policies and practices in both developed and developing countries exacerbate inequality and undermine democracy. Chomsky begins by addressing the widening gap between the prosperous few and the restless many. He argues that the global economic system is structured to benefit a small elite at the expense of the vast majority. This system, characterized by neoliberal policies such as deregulation, privatization, and austerity measures, is designed to maximize profits for corporations and the wealthy, often leading to devastating consequences for the poor segments of society. Chomsky points out that this disparity is not accidental, but a result of deliberate policy choices made by governments and international institutions, such as the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank. These policies prioritize the interests of the wealthy, often at the cost of social welfare, environmental sustainability, and human rights. The consequences are stark: increasing poverty, unemployment, and social unrest, particularly in the Global South. Central to Chomsky's critique is the concept of neoliberalism, a political and economic philosophy that emphasizes free markets, deregulation, and the reduction of state intervention in the economy. Chomsky argues that neoliberalism, which gained prominence in the late 20th century, has led to the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few, while the majority of people are left to struggle with inadequate public services, declining wages, and job insecurity. Neoliberalism, according to Chomsky, has also eroded democratic institutions and processes. By shifting power away from elected governments to unelected entities, such as corporations and international financial institutions, neoliberal policies have undermined the ability of ordinary people to influence the decisions that affect their lives. This has resulted in a growing sense of disenfranchisement and alienation among the general population, fueling the rise of populist movements and political instability in many parts of the world. Chomsky is particularly concerned with the impact of economic inequality on democracy. He argues that the concentration of wealth leads to the concentration of political power, as the wealthy use their resources to influence policy decisions, shape public opinion, and control the media. This in turn undermines the democratic process, as the interests of the majority are sidelined in favor of those of the elite. One of the key mechanisms through which this is achieved is campaign finance, where wealthy individuals and corporations fund political campaigns in exchange for favorable policies. Chomsky points out that this practice, which is particularly prevalent in the United States, effectively turns elections into a contest between different factions of the elite, with little regard for the needs and aspirations of the broader population. Moreover, Chomsky highlights the role of the media in perpetuating this system. He argues that the mainstream media, owned and controlled by a few large corporations, serves the interests of the elite by shaping public discourse in ways that reinforce the status quo. By focusing on sensationalism, entertainment, and trivial issues, the media distracts people from the underlying economic and political realities that shape their lives. Chomsky extends his analysis beyond the borders of the United States, examining the global implications of the neoliberal economic order. He discusses how developing countries are often forced to adopt neoliberal policies as a condition for receiving loans and aid from international financial institutions. These policies, which include cuts to social spending, privatization of public services, and opening up markets to foreign competition, often lead to economic devastation and social unrest. Chomsky cites the example of Latin America, where neoliberal reforms have led to widespread poverty, inequality, and social unrest. He argues that these reforms, far from promoting development, have primarily served the interests of multinational corporations and local elites, while the majority of the population has been left worse off. The same pattern can be seen in other regions, including Africa and Asia, where neoliberal policies have exacerbated existing inequalities and undermined social cohesion. Chomsky is particularly critical of the role played by the United States in promoting and enforcing the neoliberal agenda around the world. He argues that U.S. foreign policy is primarily driven by the interests of its corporate and political elite, who seek to maintain and expand their global dominance. This often involves supporting authoritarian regimes, orchestrating coups, and intervening militarily in other countries to protect American economic and strategic interests. Chomsky points out that this approach is often justified in the name of spreading democracy and human rights, but in reality, it has led to the suppression of genuine democratic movements and the imposition of economic policies that benefit the elite at the expense of the general population. He cites examples such as U.S. support for dictatorships in Latin America and the Middle East, as well as its involvement in conflicts such as the Vietnam War and the Gulf War, as evidence of this pattern. Despite the bleak picture he paints, Chomsky also discusses the potential for resistance and change. He argues that the growing discontent and unrest among the restless many could lead to the emergence of new social movements and political forces that challenge the dominance of the elite and push for more equitable and democratic alternatives. Chomsky emphasizes the importance of grassroots organizing and activism in building these movements. He points to historical examples of successful social movements, such as the labor movement, the civil rights movement, and the anti-war movement, as evidence that change is possible when people come together to demand their rights and challenge the status quo. Moreover, Chomsky advocates for a more participatory and decentralized form of democracy, where power is distributed more evenly and people have a greater say in the decisions that affect their lives. He argues that this would require a fundamental shift in the way society is organized, moving away from the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few, and towards a more cooperative and inclusive system.